Hi, I'm Stephen Carson coming at you from St. Louis, Missouri, in these United States. Um, we're going to talk about this book that came out this week from our friend Johann Kurtz, Leaving a Legacy. Some other people have talked about it, but Black Horse and I both had read it before it came out, and it brings up many issues. We depending on how we did it, we could probably do like multiple shows just inspired by this book. But anyway, we'll get to that very quickly. Support for the show greatly received at Subscribestar. Most subscribers contribute a measly $5 a month, but it lets me cover expenses for the show, books, and paying the graphic designer and so forth, and paying to multicast to Twitter and YouTube. If you're enjoying watching on Twitter, hop over to YouTube sometime and check out my video description where you'll find the Subscribestar link and help me keep that going. Because it's hard to know about the metrics on Twitter, but it seems like some people are watching on Twitter. I personally do a lot of my watching on Twitter now. I've really shifted from that. Yeah, let's bring Black Horse on. He's already talking. Hello, Black Horse. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll just mention it's actually for a technical reason that I've been watching on Twitter more. I am tending to consume content when I'm driving or at the gym with my iPhone. And it turns out that the YouTube app on the iPhone absolutely kills my battery.
Yeah,
I
it's
cannot
terrible.
watch long streams without just destroying my iPhone battery. So I have switched to using Twitter, and it's really actually pretty well behaved. It doesn't remember where I am, and I have to keep notes of like where I am in a 3 hour long stream or whatever, which is annoying. But it's better than my battery getting destroyed.
Well, that's interesting because YouTube is a pain in the butt. I do a lot of streaming or listening to podcasts in the car,
Yeah,
and the YouTube app is horrendous. So,
yeah.
if you're saying Twitter's better, I'm happy to make the switch. I noticed that about 3/4 of the people who listen to my content listen on Twitter rather than on YouTube. So,
Wow. Really?
when I do live shows. Now, some of that, my Twitter presence is a lot older than my YouTube presence, so
Right. Yeah, yeah.
maybe it's to do with that. But it's quite dramatic. So I wonder how many people have switched over.
And of course, this is assuming you can trust those numbers on the Twitter
Yeah.
streams, right? Which I don't know what to make of them quite yet. You know.
Well, and this is all going to
Right.
change for me again because the government of Canada has released a whole set of friendly new Canadian content rules, where platforms will have to prove that they're algorithmically promoting acceptable Canadian content. So God only knows whether the Red Ensign will qualify as acceptable Canadian content.
I
So,
just want to know. Just let me know now. To continue to have me as my co-host, are we going to have to do a land acknowledgement?
uh, you know, ba- we're going to have to not discuss the issue because there's like 2-year minimum sentences for residential school denialism.
Oh my God,
Uh, and God only knows what
that's amazing.
residential school denialism means.
Right.
It will be interpreted by some political hack who will be wearing a judge's robe. So, I will no longer be discussing issues related to Native Canadians in a public forum.
Yeah, and I guess we shouldn't talk about how you can see whether there's bodies under the ground, right?
No,
Anyway,
I know I have no expertise in this area. So,
that's right. That's right. We cannot talk about that. Okay, let's see. I think I've got this set up. Yeah, so I've got a PDF copy of the book here. So this is a book that just came out on, I think it was Tuesday, right? Um, wasn't it?
yeah, it
Monday or
was
Tuesday?
released on Canadian Amazon by accident early. So I think
Yeah.
it was released on Friday or something on Amazon. Anyways, his official announcement was Tuesday.
Right.
So that's when a lot of people started talking about it.
Yeah,
For
so he asked Black Horse to look over the manuscript before it was published. I did my usual copy editing thing. Usual. I do it very infrequently for friends. Um, but I did a dash through the book, and not only did I find some things to help my friend out on this, but for him to fix some things. But I was absolutely enthralled by the book. Let me be blunt here. It was, as I've been saying, you might think that this is going to be like estate planning or something, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying it isn't about that from a certain point of view, but it's probably not what you're thinking it's about if you just think, oh, it's an estate planning book, right? So actually, Black Horse was giving me a quick summary of the book, and it was better than what I was going to say. So could you, before we go off onto all the many tangents this book leads us to, could you just give us sort of the plan of the book, a rough outline of what he does in this book?
Yeah, sure. So I will say that um, I do not enjoy the majority of books which are published. Of the books our friends have published in the space, and there have been many books
Yeah.
that friends of mine have now written. There's maybe two or three that I will cite regularly, and I
Mm,
expect this to be one of
yes,
those books that I will cite.
for
Uh,
sure.
so I want to kind of offer that endorsement. This Populist Delusion, maybe one or two others, really
Yeah.
distinguish themselves from any of the other work done in this space over this period.
Yeah.
Tremendous credit to Johan for that. And the book is structured, in my opinion, with kind of two themes running through it. The first is that there's a pretty deep discourse on Christian principles of charity, right?
Yeah.
And the argument which he presents in this section is that um, it is impossible to effectively do charity as described uh, in Scripture without the continued personal involvement of the
Yeah.
benefactor, right?
Right.
And so he argues that the distribution of large fortunes via charity can only be done effectively if, from a very young age, the successors to the fortune are cultivated carefully in order to administer the pool of resources well,
Real
right?
quick, just to jump in on the you need to be personally involved. People might have heard the phrase telescopic empathy. That's where it's sort of it's got a negative connotation. It's the idea is that you're not really paying attention to the people you actually have a personal connection to. You're just like in Sex, Lies, and Videotape. You're just thinking about the poor starving children on the other side of the world that you don't really know and don't really know their situation, right? So Johann is pushing very hard, I would say, against telescopic empathy and arguing that real charity means something different, right?
Yeah, I mean, the argument is really encapsulated in his discourse on the history of the Ford Foundation, uh,
Mm,
where he takes the opposite position that many historians of the Ford family have taken, that actually Henry and Edsel Ford, Henry Ford, obviously the founder of the Ford Motor Company, his son Edsel, um, were actually quite charitable. And he notes
hmm.
their tremendous contributions to um, various areas of Michigan, particularly the greater Detroit area,
Yeah.
uh, both in terms of contributions to education and public life in the area, but also their artistic contributions via architecture to the state of Michigan. Um,
Yes. And their care for the employees of the company as
their
well.
care for the
Yeah.
employees of the company,
Right.
and I think the argument is extremely sound if you look at um, the if you look either from a metrics point of view or from a like visual assessment point of view at images you see of the Michigan of this time period, there's
Hmm.
profound evidence that um, the productivity associated with the Ford Motor Company um, rebounded into the uplifted lives of the people who lived in Michigan at the time,
Yeah.
whether they worked directly for Ford or not,
Yeah.
whether they were competent and in need of work, or whether they were the indigent of Michigan at that time. They were well cared for in a way that reflected the enormous productivity at the time.
Yeah.
And what he would go on to argue is that um, the choice by the Ford family to um, create the Ford Foundation as a mechanism to retain control, voting control of the Ford Motor Company, um, resulted in this managerial structure that administered the charitable donations given to the Ford family, that facilitated the end of its legacy of actual charity and the beginning of its legacy as a kind of left-wing patronage organization that actually helped to tear down the Michigan that the Ford family created.
Yeah. Right.
And again, I think this argument is extremely solid. Um, if you look at the things the Ford Foundation supported from sort of 1970 forward, maybe even more like 1950 forward, and you look at the actual results in the local community in Michigan, you can see the legacy of, even before you saw the kind of deindustrialization of the area, um, the way in which the life of people who lived in Michigan was uplifted during the time of Ford, uh, during the time of Henry Ford's life, ceased as a consequence of the transition of of his charitable activity into this kind of managerial bureaucracy. And actually, I I think there's a very clean argument that actually the people of Michigan would have been better off had the Ford Foundation never existed and the money just like was flushed down the toilet or something.
Right. Yeah. Which might have seemed shocking when the Ford Foundation was just getting going, but we can't act naive a couple generations later, where we have seen um, just how terrible, like you said, just handing your money off to be poured into the left wing patronage network, just how terrible an effect that has on your community. We kind of all know this now. I guess unless we're working for one, we're part of the left wing patronage
Well,
network.
we have the benefit of hindsight. We have no
Yeah.
excuse not to use it.
Hmm.
And Kurtz makes this argument with the Ford Foundation, but he actually makes this argument a couple of times in the book. And he lines up that argument with arguments from scripture that suggest that uh, the obligation, that there's actually an obligation to give in a kind of, um, to be personally connected, to give not only your time, not only your money, but your time and attention,
Yeah.
uh, to uplifting the people that God has placed in your care.
Right.
Um, and I think
And
we can
and
all
and
kind of
and Dickens got this right with Scrooge, I think, really. I mean, I've seen people write defenses of Scrooge and so on and so forth.
yeah,
But at least in that moment where they come asking him and he says, "Hey, aren't the you got my money, you got my tax money, and it's where the workhouses and the prisons are all functioning, right? Why do I need to be personally involved?" Is essentially what he says in that moment, right?
yeah,
Um, and that's exactly what Kurtz is coming after, is the idea that you sort of write a check, and now your conscience is clear, you've done your duty, and you can just go on and just live a selfish life, right?
yep. And then Kurtz follows this up and says, um, not only do you have an obligation to be personally involved um, at the level of one generation, but if you've been able to accumulate, if if God has gifted you with f- financial success of any meaningful degree, you have an opportunity that you kind of, you have a sort of noblesse oblige to pursue, to cultivate a dynasty, to continue through personal involvement paired with that money into the unending future,
Yeah.
because passing that fortune to a managerial bureaucracy uh, will not um, will not replace that cultivation.
Right, and in the launch stream, I think Johann Kurtz brought a really he's really good. My wife was commenting on this, listening to him on Esther, whatever her name is, show. Um, that he's very good at taking a very gentle uh, approach to things. We love to just sort of pick on the boomers and stuff, and he says, well, actually, there is a point there about not just handing your money off to someone who's just going to basically, you know, use it for selfish reasons, um, or that it even may be deleterious to them, that they were sort of, their life was going in a certain way, and then you dump a bunch of money on them, and then suddenly they're like, oh, well, what do I do now? I don't need to work, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and he says, well, he says you need to step back really and look at the bigger picture, which is what does in this book. And rather than having this thing of, at some point, when you're 30 or something, I die and you get all my money, or there should be just like with children, there should be a incremental, ongoing building up of responsibilities, such that it isn't just like a light switch going from off to on. It's gradual, right? From a young age, he argues, you are grooming your child to the point to get to the point where they have the responsibility, they have the perspective, the spiritual perspective, to carry on the legacy in a good way, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's 100% correct that the kind of nobility with which expects money to be handled is is cultivated through a lifetime,
Yeah.
and lack of that kind of character, placing money into the hands of someone who lacks that kind of character can be extraordinarily destructive, both to them and to the community that they're supposed to be serving. Um, so that argument is extremely tight, um, and I'm sure is very difficult for some people to accept. Like, um, inevitably, some fraction of the people who accumulate large sums of money will fail to cultivate their children, cultivate children that are capable of managing it in a way that kind of honors that legacy. Um, and the logical conclusion of Kurtz's work is that actually you should be reticent to entrust your legacy. So if you fail in the cultivation of your own children, then you should be reticent to hand them money because uh, for reasons that we all kind of understand, right? If you look at,
Yeah.
uh, I don't think he does the lottery winners analysis here, but it's certainly at the tip of of my fingertips the number of lottery winners who literally kill themselves within a decade of winning.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
so there's he's absolutely correct that you've got this uh, that paired with financial success is this kind of deep obligation to cultivate uh, your legacy in a thoughtful way, and to accurately assess kind of where you are in that process, both from the point of view of handing responsibility and duty off at an appropriate time so that your grandchildren and great grandchildren have an opportunity to benefit from what you've accumulated, but also from the point of view of um, not causing a problem in the way that
Hmm.
that transition is approached.
Yeah.
So I think we've kind of given an outline to Kurtz's basic thought pattern.
Yeah.
Um, what were
Yeah.
some of the
Well,
things that really stuck out to you in the book?
right. Well, I'm gonna reshare some things I shared on the launch space on Twitter that we had for his book, that Black Horse and I both participated in. Um, First of all, a book like this, I realized that I had come into it with this expectation, maybe from reading, I don't know, self-improvement books or something, that I was going to feel really like condemned, like I was going to be
Yeah.
like, oh, I should have been doing this and this and this. And, to be fair, I do have some ideas of things I could be doing that I wasn't, right? Having said that, I was surprised at how encouraging I found the book to be. One of the things he talks about, raising children worthy of empires. Maybe I'll look at some of the sections there to share, but he talks about the importance of ritual. Um,
Yeah, this is
in
a very
fact,
good
you
point.
know what? I think I can find it real quick. I had used it for Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm right to it. So I'm going to share this. Yeah, so he talks about the importance of rituals um, in shaping the kind of family that is going to be able to act responsibly and carry on a legacy. And so I'm going to just home in on this a bit because part of the reason is that it was encouraging to me and it was striking, but also because I feel like bringing this up pretty early in the stream should bring home to anyone who's still got kind of the wrong idea about the book that this is there's deeper stuff here than you might have guessed, right? You hear a book about legacy and it's leaving legacy and it's probably got to do something with money and stuff like that, and you might think it's sort of surface or materialist, you might say. This is a very spiritual book. um, and But spiritual in a really rooted way, as you'll see here. So in this section, he talks about never forget the normal practices and rituals of raising healthy children. Um, and what does he mean? Uh, well, it can be quite simple. For example, he says an example of a healthy behavior is disciplined adherence to nightly family dinners and discussion, which study after study reaffirms as a key foundation for strong families and healthy children. This builds family bonds, a sense of stability, analytical and debating skills, and is strongly correlated with academic performance and healthy eating. Okay, so this is pretty cool. We have regular family dinners, nightly family dinners. So, hey, check. We're doing something that he recommends, right? That's encouraging. And then as I thought about it, I remembered that at some point when I was an adult, my mother was sort of thinking back through raising us, and she asked, do you have some things that are positive, or what was the most positive memory for you from your childhood? And I think we all, me and my siblings, all said to her, it was the family dinners. Those were times that we were all together. We all participated, very lively. People would come and visit my family that I was like friends with at school or whatever, and they were like, wow, that was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
My wife said the same thing the first time before we were married, the first time she joined us for a family dinner. She found it very striking, a lot of humor, a lot of sharing stories, debating about things, being in relationship with each other, right? So what I love about this is it is part of leaving a legacy, as Kurtz makes clear in this book, but it's something that any family can almost certainly do. I mean, there can be challenges with people who work second shift and third shift and stuff like that, but you can
Well, it's
find a way to meet together regularly like this, and you can do it. You don't have to be like an aristocratic family to pull this off, right?
well, it's interesting because as you say this, I think about the way your approach to something as simple as a family dinner shapes your legacy your legacy, the kind of culture that you impart generationally to your children.
Yeah.
I think back to the family dinners that my family had. Family dinner with my father was like a business status meeting. Every member of the family had to offer a report on what they accomplished that day, and
Wow.
you know, what did you do at school? Where like all this stuff. Um, and it was part of the culture that my father drove into me from an early age about how to kind of self-assess and work effectively.
Mm.
He assessed my school day every day with me.
Wow.
And if I refuse to report, then you don't get dessert, right? Uh, and for better or for worse, that's with me today. It will be with my children to a degree.
Hmm.
Um, no different than in our family, we have family dinner and then we have like family worship together. So
Hmm.
we do scripture reading as a family. I pray for each of the children. Um, these are things that are free and yet will profoundly shape uh, the way that your family continues on into the future. Will
Right.
profoundly shape the things that your children believe are important to you.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing that I think is important, speaking to looking around at many of my peers who are millennials and younger, is that it will teach young people to speak to adults in a way that they do not otherwise learn. Um,
Yes.
one of the things that is terrifying about speaking to people under the age of about 35 is their struggle. in speaking to figures of authority or figures of competence. Their
Yeah.
inability to make eye contact, their inability to um, just have a healthy, normal social dynamic as an adult because they were socialized in an environment where they only ever spoke to people their own age,
Yeah.
except in the kind of authoritative relationship that accompanies the classroom.
Right.
And this is catastrophic to them when they become adults. And
Yeah.
so, um, family dinners are one part of it, but I am a huge proponent of anything and everything that puts children into regular healthy contact with adults,
Yeah.
doing something constructive together.
Right. Yeah. You may not, anyone who follows me on Twitter wouldn't be shocked to learn that my family dinner growing up, and indeed my own family now, there's a big emphasis on sharing things that are funny. Just
Yes.
something funny that happened to you or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We like to laugh. Um, okay, a couple more things here, and then I was going to share a ritual that I didn't even realize was a ritual. Um, to what Blackhorse just said, he writes, ensure that your children are establishing real bonds with a range of elders and their grandparents in particular. Essentially what Blackhorse just said. And then, I don't, why did I not? Okay, I'm highlighting this right now because he said this verbally, and I was like, how did I miss that phrase? A ritual protected family, he says. Um, uh, and what does that mean to have a ritual protected family? I said that to my wife, and she's like, "What does that mean?" I was like, "Yeah, out of context, that could sound a little like, are you talking about magic or something?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but what he means is he says rituals are not just routines. Mere routines are pragmatic and instrumental. Rituals transcend routines when they become symbolically endowed, when they are given a special meaning and aesthetic. Rituals assert a break from conventional existence. In so doing, they stand out and become memorable. The transition from mundane to sacred is felt strongly in rituals. The night before Christmas, the joining of hands before grace, the lights turned off before the birthday candles are lit, the ashes on the forehead on Ash Wednesday. So these can seem like small little habits or something. And he's saying, no, in fact, they're rituals. They're rituals that tie us to previous generations, to future generations, and in a lot of these cases, vertically to God, right?
Well, and one of the other points that he makes through this section is that um, rituals and these intergenerational ties, uh, one of the things that characterizes them is that they're items you can participate in at any economic level, um, which means that as things change in the economic circumstances of the family, the ritual remains the same. It's a way of
Yeah,
grounding the
yeah,
family outside the context of, you know, it takes you from, it creates a kind of perspective that is uh, profoundly non-materialistic,
yeah,
and implants it at the center of your family. Um, and one of the themes that comes out of this book, which I think is very on the nose, is that the only people who are able to to properly handle large fortunes are people who are not um, held captive by their fortunes, who are not profoundly materialistic. They have
hmm,
a kind of uh, transcendent view of life,
yeah,
um, that is able that kind of frees them from the bondage that often comes with um, material possessions. And
right,
so, in a sense, if you're these rituals that uh, break from the sort of materialistic frame of our society around us, are a way of imparting that perspective, um, and recentering it in your life continually, in a surrounding culture that tends to emphasize the material very heavily.
yeah. By the way, that the grounding of ritual, I think Eddie Murphy, believe it or not, kind of nailed this in one of his stories. Um, he said, he had become rich and famous at this point, right? And he
Yeah.
describes that a little bit, I'm being chauffeured around and all that stuff. And he says, and then I go visit my mom, and she's like, "Hey, Eddie, take out the trash."
Yeah, exactly.
which,
Exactly.
but it was funny the way he told it, but it was really making the point that you're making, right? He didn't share that as if like he was mad about it. I think the underlying thing was that was a grounding experience. He was still his mother's son, right? It was like plugging into reality, whereas being rich and famous can kind of get you off away from reality. So I wanted to share something I shared on the launch space, which is that reading this about ritual and the importance of it and the way that it sets up um, family relationships, and in some cases relationships that go beyond that, um, and and uh, and the importance of the regularity, right? I mean, part to state the obvious, a ritual is something you do over and over, right?
Yeah.
It's a repeated thing. So that made me realize, oh, I was participating in a ritual when I edited this book, literally. So let me tell you the story. Um, an old friend of mine, he goes back to high school. He was in my wedding. I was at his wedding. Um, he and I have sons that are 6 months apart. It's his only child, and it's my last son. And starting the year they were turning 6 years old, we began a tradition. On each boy's birthday, the other father and son road trip to the birthday boy's city. We all attend the boy's birthday party together, and the guest son, the out of town son, meets the peer friends and family of the birthday boy. And this has already resulted, by the way, in some cross city friendships among these boys.
Right.
Through
Yeah.
through the magic of the internet, they're able to, when we're not in the same city, they're actually able to
Keep in touch about.
keep in touch and game and stuff like that, right? Um, then much of the rest of the weekend is literally the four of us, the two fathers and the two sons doing various things together. There's a place called Tank Park. I particularly loved our visits to that. It's fascinating. Um, Endorsed by Thomas 77, by the way. Uh, there, there are times when during these weekends, there's times when one father is minding both sons so that the boys experience some guidance from their father's friend, right, from another adult male, right.
Yeah.
Um, so, for example, on this recent trip, the boys stayed with me for 2 nights where I was staying, and the two of them stayed with my friend on another night, right? So in each case, they're under the supervision of their uncle, or so to speak. Um, and then the weekend always concludes with us attending church together before we drive back to our hometown. And in fact, this time, it just so happens, my friend had become an elder in his church. And so my son got to see him participating as part of the church service. He got up and had a role to play. Um, so so you can see that, the ritual that I have with my son of doing this, it builds a relationship between us. It builds a relationship with these other friends. It stretches out to these other relationships with our boys' friends, getting to know each other. Um, and then this is not, as you might imagine, this is not like something that our sons dread. The boys love these times together. They count down the days until we're going to be doing this road trip again. My son will be like, "It's 10 days, Dad. I looked at the calendar. It's 10 days till we go." Um, and our son's turned 12 years old this year. So
Yeah.
I didn't do the math, but that's like 6 or 7 times, 6 years or something like that we've done this every year. So anyway, I thought that I was in the reason that came to mind. It was sort of obvious in a way. I had a little break where the boys were with my friend, and I edited the book during that time. So I'm ripping through this book, and I'm like, wait a second, he's talking about what I'm doing literally right now. We have a ritual that we've established, and it touches on a lot of the things he brought up about the importance of rituals.
Well, and one of the things that I think is important about a book like this is that, um, at least for myself, I had the benefit of having a lot of things of this character passed to me from a previous generation,
Hmm.
maybe a previous two or three generations. Um, because of what has happened in Western societies, a lot of young people have had that generational chain broken for them. They don't
Yeah.
have any experience with the pre-modern way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so um, they're trying to reconstruct from nothing um, a life that kind of works, and a way of doing parenting now. Like, these are people in their 20s and 30s who are in this position. And uh, this is a very effective way of communicating to them how to be intentional about things that would come as second nature to me, right? So, uh, i- as you point out, if I reviewed my own life, I would find dozens of these rituals that I carry on with my
Mm-hmm.
own children, some of which were carried on with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, some not, but many were. Um, and that's one thing for me. I can point to the the way family dinner was done, the way family game night was a huge thing in my
Mm.
family, where all my aunts and uncles and brothers and grandparents and there'd be 20 or 30 black horses gathered together to play Scrabble or Boggle, or these stupid board games that
Yeah.
everybody liked to play in the 80s and 90s. Um, and mostly because my parents thought it was a good way of teaching me how to spell. And anyone who watches
Mm-hmm.
my Twitter feed can see the abysmal failure that was. But you know, there are these things that were passed to me from the old world.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself as part of this audience as someone who's had that chain broken on you, um, this book is a good kind of it gives you a good place to start for how to
Yeah.
reconstruct on the other side of that breach of tradition.
And why to do it? Why
Yeah.
is it important? Right?
Well, whenever
Yeah.
you're trying to do something, you should always start with the why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you decide you're gonna make a major change in life, well, I want to have children, I want to marry someone. Well, why do I want to do that?
Yeah.
Um, and you should have a good answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
And this book is great at giving you a good answer as to um, why you should make that decision, and how its consequences will reverberate generationally in your family if you do it well, or I suppose if you do it poorly as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so the importance of ritual and why is this important for leaving a legacy? Well, a lot of things. We talked about um, making connections with people older than you, being able to relate to them, um, feeling connected, right, to the previous generation. That's all important for the young person coming up in this situation. Also, I don't want to underestimate it. Just that your family is a valuable thing that you want to invest in carrying forward what your family is, what it offers to the world, right? If you don't feel connected to it, and these rituals help connect you, especially when they're family rituals. If you don't feel connected to your family, um, then why
Well,
propagate it?
you're at a profound disadvantage in a whole collection of ways. First
Yeah.
of all, you lack that basic net. Like, families are valuable in immaterial ways, but they're also tremendously materially valuable to you as your fortunes change through your life. And those networks that are built in this way are extremely powerful, whether they're powerful in the work of administering the legacy of somebody who accumulates a great deal of capital and wants to deploy it on behalf of a community. Uh, you know, Edsel Ford was a tremendously better administrator of Henry Ford's earnings than the Ford Foundation ever was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a very good reason for that. Edsel Ford shared the values and perspective that was imparted to him by his father, um, and shared a kind of tradition. Um, so there's that element to it, but there's also the element to it that these things scale down the economic ladder, where
Yeah.
maybe you're not as successful as Henry Ford. Oh gosh darn, um, you may find that having a strong family network, through which, uh, things like employment opportunities, or childcare assistance, or even financial assistance when you're in difficult times where these things can be passed, might be tremendously valuable to you to prevent you. We talked about going up and down the status hierarchy when you went through your series on class in America.
Yeah.
And one of the um, profound differences between people at the lowest levels of status in the United States and people farther up in the middle is whether or not they have people they can turn to for help.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
People at the very bottom tend to be quite isolated, and they tend to only rise if they've got networks of people on which they can rely.
Yeah.
Um, and they tend to fall when they don't have networks of people on which they can rely. And I think people really underestimate the material value of strong family networks, um, because they think of life in terms of nothing ever happens. But if you get to 50, you realize that in the course of your life, some things will happen.
Yeah.
Um, and, without getting too biographical, I'm sure in both of our lives, uh, we've had a few moments where having a network really, really mattered.
Yep. Or when we didn't get support from that network, it was hard.
Well, when you really didn't when you, one of the things people forget is when you don't get support from that network, you fall behind. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I think about this as an outsider looking at your own life. Um, you frequently talk about your uh, long absence from the intellectual scene that you were interested in,
Yeah.
uh, during which time you had 8 children.
Right.
And fair enough. Having 8 children is a tremendous investment. It's going to tax even the most well networked person that
Yeah.
exists. But I'm sure that experience would have been profoundly easier if you had a thick network of community on which you could rely to help you through that
Exactly.
time.
Instead of
Uh,
it basically being me and my wife
yes, I mean
on our own.
you're absolutely, yeah. It's I mean it's certainly I something that I plan to do better for our children than was done for
Mm.
me.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
at
definitely.
least
My wife
I'm
and I
at
have
all
talked about
capable.
that. Yeah.
I mean, I when I was there's some reasonably close family friends that I have who, when their daughter's first child was born, uh, grandma came and stayed for 6, 8, 10 weeks, just
Hmm.
so that mom could get her feet under her.
Yep.
And if you think about the level of advantage conferred to that family by that support, people
It's
don't,
tremendous.
just radically underestimate. Imagine if that's what happened to you every time one of your children were born. Would you have
Yeah.
exited the intellectual scene for 15 years? Maybe
Right.
not. I don't know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Um, I wanted to, I thought this story of John Hancock just blew me away. Maybe less profound for a non-US person, but um, I didn't know much about him. Um, I know the name always meant a lot to me because one of the guys who founded the church with my father, Black Horse, just so happens his name is John Hancock. But anyway,
Right. Okay.
I was just seeing him recently and gaining from his wisdom. But anyway, he talks about John Hancock, who signed his name big on the Declaration of Independence and all that. I did not know the story about this guy, and I was enthralled. Anyway, it really illustrates the importance of introducing your children into a network. Now, in this case, his father died um, when he was what 6 or 7 or something. Um, But then an uncle, Thomas Hancock, asked if he could raise the boy. And so Thomas Hancock, he had no heir for his the House of Hancock, his Boston Mercantile Empire. Um, and so he brought John Hancock in, and he groomed him really well. I'm going to skip, his education, all that, because what really struck me was, um, let's see, yeah, he moved after graduation. His uncle moved John straight into the heart of the family business. Um, uh, yeah. Here's the part. Thomas took the young man everywhere with him, meeting merchants, captains, officials, generals, and every member of Boston's unofficial aristocracy. John became familiar with the markets, the State House, the coffee houses, the Royal Exchange, and the Merchants Club, and they became familiar with him. So I thought that was really fascinating. How important it became later that, again, not in this sort of, Thomas gets sick at the end of his life and is like, oh crap, what do I do? No. While Thomas is still in the middle of his business success, he is grooming this his nephew, John. He's introducing him to everyone. He's teaching him the business. He's sending him on important missions that I think I'm trying to remember, but I think he didn't always succeed on those missions, right?
And this is one of the things, like one of the reasons why I think family-owned businesses are profoundly valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, looking at my own experience, the best thing that my father ever did for me was to give me a job working for the family business when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And he very much, in the way that he conducted himself, mirrored Mr. Hancock in that he didn't just give me a job, he gave me an opportunity to go and build a professional network and
Yeah.
go and be part of the social fabric that existed within the industry in which I work.
Right.
Um, on the back of his coattails, and there's, it doesn't always work. You're going to pay a
Sure.
certain cost for it at times. I'm sure, I made plenty of social mistakes along the way. That's just part of it. But this is how generational relational capital is preserved. It has to be intentionally passed on. It doesn't just get passed from one to the other as part of someone's last will and testament. It's passed through this active process of cultivation throughout their life.
Right. So it looks less like uh, just executing a will and more like discipleship, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's mentorship, it's discipleship. Um, and yeah, so like I said, this is not what you might have expected going into this book, that he ends up talking about um, how to have rituals for your family, how to introduce the young people in your family into your wider network, how to incrementally uh, give them responsibility, right? Which we should know, we do know with raising little children, right? You don't hand them a gun when they're 5, right? Um,
Yeah,
uh,
but
you
it's got a
you
particular
you
emphasis.
stepwise get there. Go ahead.
It's got a particular emphasis on what I view as the lost art of parenting, particularly men from the ages of maybe 14 or 15 to
Yeah,
25.
very good. Yes. Oh, here I have a personal theory. I don't have science. This is just me talking, me making it up. I have a personal theory that the rise in like teen suicide, especially of young men, had something to do with the teenage years feeling completely pointless. You're
Yes,
17 or 18 when you should be experiencing something like what young John Hancock experienced at that age. And instead, you're like doing worksheets that don't matter to anyone in the world. It's horrible. You are
yeah,
ready to start contributing, or at least starting to be train so that you can contribute, so you can see how this is going to bring you to a place where you can contribute. And instead, you're doing just useless shit.
Well, and you're
It's
supposed to be
terrible.
failing, right? You're supposed These are the years where if you fail, no one cares. And
Mm-hmm.
instead you're using them to do things that you're going to succeed at. Like,
Interesting point.
well, so like one of the pieces that I've taken from just like the theory of compound interest is to look at the economic impact of failure at various points in your life. And so
Mm,
if you fail at the age of 50, there are some pretty severe consequences to that. You don't have a lot of opportunities to recover.
right.
Equally, if you succeed, you don't get there's no compounding on that success. The success happens once and then you're done and you have no opportunity to kind of develop it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you succeed at the age of 25, even if you just like have a have a good idea, found a business, walk away, go home. You've got like 50 years of compound interest on the value of that success that you're going to be able to enjoy before passing it on. Um, I feel that um, there's our society just tremendously wastes the these years from 15 to 25, especially
Mm,
for men.
yeah.
I mean, for women, it's wasted as well, but the results are kind of different.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Because
they're
they can get married at 27 or 28 and still have a reasonable, have children and have a reasonable life. Whereas
well,
the 27-year-old that is useless is widely viewed as a pathetic figure.
Well, and people don't understand how much better the life of a woman is who successfully bonded and got married at 20 and had that young life with her husband and
Mm. Hmm.
developed her family from that age, because so few of these people exist, right?
Right.
Like I noticed my wife and I got married at 22 and 20 respectively.
Okay.
Um, and people don't know that about us because our first the first pregnancy in our marriage was a miscarriage, so they kind
Mm.
of assume we were married later. But one of the things that I think about it is at this stage of our life, we've been married 15, 16 years. um, there's been a tremendous opportunity to build our family that a lot of our peers missed out on, and they're just trying to build their family now.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I feel when I spend time with people my own age, I feel like I've lived a decade and a half more life than they have
Right.
in many cases.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. If
and
you're a guy in an apartment until you're 30,
yeah,
I mean, you might be growing in various ways in the workplace and stuff, but it's quite different than you're 30 and you're 5 years into raising children, you're 10 years into your marriage, right?
yeah, and I feel the same way about my wife and the way she used her 20s, whereas the way that many women use their 20s, like
Hmm.
uh, she used her 20s to begin building a family that is going to reward her for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and that's a profoundly valuable investment. It's going to and that was only possible because of the way we were built into in the years between 15 and 25. um,
Hmm.
you know it it's it was a unique privilege of our own situations, respectively, that we didn't experience what a lot of our peers experienced, which is kind of, well, we'll send you off to university and you can get an education, and that will prepare you for adulthood. And we're going to do nothing else to invest in your life. Maybe somehow going to enough keggers will make you an adult. Um,
Yeah.
which is like that's the actual parenting style of most upper middle class people
Wow.
in in our society.
Yeah, yeah. You're not just like making this up as a joke. You're like thinking of people, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if I think about my peers, that was the parenting strategy.
right,
Do as well as you can in high school. Make sure you do lots of extracurriculars. Go to an Ivy League school and participate in as many fun parties as possible, so you can be socially prepared for adulthood.
right,
Like,
right.
um,
Sad. We're almost at an hour. I just wanted to bring one more thing up, and then maybe you can bring up one more thought of yours on the book. It also, one of the things that surprised me reading the book is I got thinking about mutual aid societies. I did a series on this channel about mutual aid societies, how important they were to Europeans in general, I think, but certainly in the Anglosphere. Um, say 100 years ago, and then further back from that, and then they fell in importance really by about mid 20th century, something like that. Um, but they played a really important role in terms of uh, helping you build network, having people who could have your back in times of trouble. So it's some of those same functions that he focuses on here, having to do with the family, but just extended out, right? And these mutual aid societies might be people who are like-minded in a certain way. They might be an ethnic, the Italian club or something, they tended to be exclusive and where people had something in common. Maybe the trade that they were in, like a union type of mutual union slash mutual aid society kind of thing. Um, I've been involved with starting one called the Old Glory Club, um, and that's part of our vision for that is to bring something of that back. And anyway, so I was surprised reading this book that all that mutual aid society stuff came to mind, and I'm like, oh, well, this connects up. This totally connects up,
it
right?
does.
Because especially, and part of the reason I brought up Black Horse is because of what you said about those where the generation, the Boomer generation or whatever, some generation kind of broke the chain, and people find themselves without support from others. Um, they find themselves without the network that a family should have provided them with, a father should provide them with. Maybe these mutual aid societies can help us kind of kickstart some of that or bootstrap. That's the word I'm looking for. Bootstrap some of those people where the chain was broken, get them going again with their own families and get that back on their families sort of back into what would have come natural to their great grandparents. That's kind of my hope.
Yeah, I mean it's this very difficult process of rebuilding the social fabric
Yeah,
in a society where um, you know everything that could possibly be done to undermine the social fabric is being done,
yeah,
right? I couldn't help thinking as I read this book, just because of what was going on in the news at the time, of that somewhat infamous Ben Shapiro clip that went around over the
mm-hmm.
last 2 weeks. Uh, if you're too poor to live where you grew up, you don't have a right to live there,
Yeah,
right? Which is an explicit attack on the idea that you are given a social place by your parents,
mm-hmm.
and uh, or that the previous generation has any obligation to try to give you a social place.
Right,
Um, this book is actually about uh, what it means to do your duty as a father on behalf of your children to give them a place in the next generation.
yes,
Uh, it's not a book about how to manage your estate. It's a book about how to give your children a place and how
mm,
to um, I mean, in the specific context, he's arguing that in order to manage your estate well, you must uh, create children who are worthy of inheriting it.
yeah,
Um, but I actually think the book is better framed as is better framed outside of leaving a legacy if you've got great financial wealth to um, what duties do I have as a father to my children and grandchildren.
yeah, yeah, and you're right, and even as we've been talking, I've been thinking about the legacy from my father, which was not so much material as a legacy, a spiritual legacy. My father was a pastor, and a legacy of the kind of charity he talks about in that book. So, for example, when I was young, we would take people into our home who were in need. Well, sure enough, my wife and I, we had a boy who left his family because of abuse, and he just walked to our house and said, I didn't know where to go, and I knew I'd be safe with you. And so he stayed with us for a little while until we could figure out next steps for him. So we were carrying forward a legacy I got from my dad. That was not a legacy of riches, but it was a legacy of engagement with the community, of the kind of charity that Johann emphasizes in this book, right? That's a legacy too, right?
Yes, and no matter what economic or social level you find yourself at, um, there is an opportunity there if you do your duty to your children and your grandchildren to pass on um, a legacy which is admirable and which glorifies God
Yes,
and to pass that into the future and to avoid passing into the future the kind of disastrous legacies that people often unthoughtfully pass into the future.
right. Yeah, and that happens at very high net worth with very high net worth families just
All
as
the way up
much.
and down the
Yeah,
socioeconomic ladder that happens.
yeah, absolutely. And it's just at the very high net worth, especially if they have some celebrity, you read about it in the gossip papers.
Well, and one of the things I want people to take away from this review is that sometimes you don't read about it, right? So uh,
Mm-hmm.
it isn't if you sit in the sort of intellectual circles that we sit in, you might know about the tremendously destructive legacy of the Ford family, um, or the Carnegie family, or somebody like that. But regular people don't know about the tremendously destructive legacy that the intergenerational breach in those families wreaked. Um, and I think that it's really important to know that one of the reasons why the United States, the broader West, is in the condition that it's in is that this happened in our aristocracy, and we can point out specific people, specific families that it happened to. Right? Uh, if the Ford family had practiced the principles that Kurtz forwards in this book better, the United States would be in a profoundly better condition, and certainly the state of Michigan
Right,
would be in a profoundly better condition.
right.
Uh, you're never going to read about that in a gossip column, not even if you were alive when it was going on. And yet, um, the results are written all over. I mean, in the Ford family's case, the face of the world.
Yeah. A last theme that you'd like to pull out before we stop?
No, that was the last theme I wanted to
Okay,
pull out.
very good. Okay, well, let's stop it there. It's Thanksgiving in the U.S. 1 week from today, so no show then. But Black Horse is raring to go with some observations on uh, economic matters. So hopefully these things will still be deemed worth talking about. Black Horse in 2 weeks. We'll see. Or maybe
Yeah,
something else will have
one
come
can
along.
only hope. Yes.
We try not to be overly topical with our Econ Minis show. So hopefully we have some perennial themes to visit. Anyway, I think that probably is what we'll do next if you're available in that first Thursday of December, Black Horse. Go for an Econ Minis and cover some of these things that you've been sharing with me because it's been a while. It'd be good to catch up on that. And, just something to plant in the back of your head. We're heading towards a year of the second Trump administration. A lot of big talk as he was running for office about what he was going to do for the economy. So might be a chance to step back and just assess a little bit of, what direction do things seem to be going under Trump too,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining. Like I said, U.S. Thanksgiving next week, so a week off. And the book, I think I kind of implied it, but let me just say explicitly, the book by Johann Kurtz is not long. I ripped through it while editing in like 4 hours. It's not that big of a book, and there's just not a page wasted. So I can really recommend it to your attention. The Amazon link is in the video description on the YouTube video, if you just want to click a link. So really recommend it. This is not just shilling a book of a friend. This is tying together a lot of themes that I've discussed on this channel and that I've been trying to live out with helping form the Old Glory Club, with what I'm doing with my family, and just a general, like you said, trying to restart some of the social fabric that got interrupted in the last generation or two. We'd like to bring some of these things back for the good of us all. So thanks, everyone, and see you next time.